Barcelona's top left-wing target as Manchester United look to offload 5 players, including Jadon Sancho, Antony, Alejandro Garnacho and Tyrell Malacia.
Welcome back to the Transfer Show. Now let's talk about a number of potential moves that are just bubbling under the surface nicely. And Dharmesh, we spoke about Manchester United before and the fact they're trying to offload those 5 players. But we know that they're trying to offload those 5 players. All of their rivals know that. Yeah. Does that mean that those rivals can then offer under the cush for these 5? I mean, how does United get rid of these players? Well, we're going to take a short break, and after the break, Manchester United's second bid for Bryan Mbeumo was rejected at the end of June. When we come back, we'll let you know how things stand. More on that. We'll let you know.
Look, I touched on this a bit earlier on, but Manchester United's preference for all of these 5 players is to do permanent sales for them. Right. However, that is easier said than done. If they were to do permanent sales for all of them, you're looking at 125 to 150 million pounds that they could glean to rebuild again in this transfer window. However, the interested clubs for most of these players are also discussing not only a permanent deal, but also a loan deal as well. Now, as far as United are concerned, if it is to be loans for any of these players, they would want a permanent element attached to that, so maybe an obligation at the end of that deal. They would also want to be quite creative with their loans, and they have done this kind of thing before. If you look back to the example of Jadon Sancho, he had 2 loan spells when he's been at Manchester United, one with Borussia Dortmund and one with Chelsea. Now, the one with Borussia Dortmund, Manchester United actually made a profit on his wages in that time. Archers at Juventus for them to be able to fund a deal for Sancho. Now, significantly, Marseille are in talks with Juventus over a potential deal for Timothy Weah. Now, that could help Juventus fund a deal for Jadon Sancho. Talks between United and Juve are open, as are talks between Juve and Sancho's representatives. As yet, there's not been an agreement on either. So there hasn't been an agreement on a transfer fee, and we talked about Rashford's wages. Sancho's on big wages as well. So Juventus remain in talks with his representatives over trying to find an agreement on the personal terms. It feels like the more problematic one would be the personal terms, and then Juventus could probably negotiate on the transfer fee with regard to Jadon Sancho. So no agreement on either front yet, but we think that Sancho's asking price is around £25 million, which is what Chelsea would have had to have paid had they taken up their obligation at the end of last season. Antony, meanwhile, Real Betis, we know they remain desperate to sign Antony. Antony wants to go to Real Betis, had a really successful second half of last season at Real Betis. Difficult deal again for Real Betis to do, given the finances involved. But these 5 players behind me, they're the ones that
this potential transfer deal, which is £55 million, the add-ons are now being discussed. And one of the reasons why this deal has moved a step closer to being completed is because the agent has agreed to waive a chunk of his fee, which has helped Arsenal and Sporting Lisbon get this deal a step closer. The other thing to point out as well is that Coventry are due around 10% of any profit that Sporting Lisbon make on this one. They sold him to Sporting a couple of summers ago for around £21 million. So if they're going to get about 70 million, give or take, depending on add-ons, that could be worth £4 to £5 million for Frank Lampard and that Coventry City side, which would be huge in the Championship to inject there. So they're so close. It's just those final details and the structure of those add-ons which are so crucial to getting this one done. But it feels like now it's only a matter of time before Arsenal fans can turn around and say, finally, we've got the striker that we've been craving.